We're going to spend more time talking about this tragic, violent episode in Kramatorsk with Douglas Herbert. We've gone over the details. We're seeing the Russian side trying to push its own narrative of what's happening, but you believe this is clearly yet another Russian strike targeting civilians.
Yeah, but informed belief, if you will. Look, this is clearly part of what is becoming a pattern in this war. And it was been a pattern in previous wars in which Russia was involved, whether we're talking about Syria or Chechnya or wherever. A pattern of denial, blanket categorical denial of not us, not here, keep walking, a blanket denial in any involvement when there is the targeting of civilians in these places. We just saw it in Bucha, right? A blanket denial, not even going beyond blanket denial, but also saying that it was staged. It was a provocation by Ukrainian Nazis, staged like a film set, putting the bodies there in order to bring aspersion, cast aspersion on the world, on Russia. Look, let's actually see what the Russians said. What's interesting here is that before the casualty numbers, the death toll started to become clear, and the world started latching onto this as perhaps another Bucha 2, if you will. The Russian Defense Ministry had actually said way earlier in the day that it had used 3 high-precision rockets to target 3. It used high-precision rockets to target 3 railway stations in the Donbass region. Why? Because it claimed that those railway stations housed Ukrainian reserves armaments and other military equipment. That was before the casualty toll mounted. As soon as the casualties mounted, the world headlines started popping up. Everyone in this defense ministry, you could imagine thinking, oh my God, we're going to have another Bucha on our hands here. This is just what we need right now. Blanket denial, categorical denial, not our missiles. We had no plans. We conducted 0 artillery strikes on this Friday, April 8th in that region, had no plans to do so. So you went from, interestingly, earlier in the morning, just a sort of almost a bland statement that, yes, the Russian Defense Ministry from the Defense Ministry was saying that they had used high-precision missiles to target what they believed were the housing areas, depots for equipment, which happened to be in rail stations, to the fact that when they realized perhaps that they hit a crowded, and there were said to be hundreds, if not thousands, of civilians present in the station at the time of this strike, to a blanket denial. So this is part of a pattern. Let's have no false equivalency here. I really am not going to start with, on the one hand, the Russians say, on the other hand, the Ukrainians say. This is a case of one side, the facts are going to out, and this is going to show that fits into the Russian pattern. I'll just mention Kramatorsk. We could briefly show the map. Kramatorsk is also a strategic town, geographically speaking. Why? Because it is located in a part of the Donbass region, of the Donetsk region, which Putin basically is aiming at. As they rearm and regroup the Russian forces in the east of the country, this is still in territory controlled by the Ukrainian army, Kramatorsk, and not in the territory of Donbass and Donetsk, Luhansk, which is controlled by the rebels. So it is key, and this is part of an ongoing Russian pattern, to terrorize the civilian population, to sow confusion among the civilian population, and to perhaps ramp up pressure on the Ukrainian forces.
So in spite of the human cost, as you've explained, this doesn't come as a surprise. And actually yesterday, the Ukrainian foreign minister actually warned the world of the risk of this kind of attack happening.
Worse is yet to come. And the Ukrainian foreign minister basically said, tragically, it's sad that I have to remind you of this, but what you're going to see when worse is yet to come, it's going to remind you of the Second World War, is what he said. These types of images. Very unfortunately, what we're seeing today in Kramatorsk is going to be the thin end of a wedge here. We are going to see if all of the analysts and everyone who's followed these wars closely are right. The Russians are repositioning, rearming, regrouping for a massive all-out assault. There are 0 signs, 0 out of the Kremlin, that Putin has in any way or shape or form been swayed by the increasing Western sanctions, by the fact that Ukraine is being sent extra weapons from the West. The sanctions haven't hit his oil and gas industry yet. Europe is still effectively paying almost €1 billion, to Russia to finance the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine. So we don't see any of that. So there's no reason not to think we're not going to see more of this. There is nothing in place right now to prevent that, which is why it is so critical today and why the Europeans are making these physical presence, their own trips to Kiev. The head of the European Commission is going physically to Kiev with the European foreign policy chief to be there, to show solidarity, to ramp up pressure on Europe and the countries that aren't ready to go whole hog, so to speak, and give the heavy weaponry that Ukraine says it needs. Not just today, Charles, not just tomorrow, but for a war which some are warning could last months, if not years. That was actually Jens Stoltenberg, the NATO secretary.